I think when it comes to what's going on with COVID, there's a lot we'll talk about. We'll save it for the members portion because we can get into some harder numbers and we'll pull up this Wall Street Journal story, which I can't talk about on YouTube. No joke. But I can talk about something that I think is a ticking time bomb. And I'd love to get your thoughts on this, Karol. This is the nationwide eviction ban is going to expire this Saturday after Biden administration loses fight with the Supreme Court. So there it is. We were talking about this the other day. There's millions of people that are ready to be evicted. Someone super chatted us saying that they work at a bank and the bank is like lining up evictions. And we were like, is there going to be an intervention to stop the evictions? Because if there isn't, we're going to have August of panic where people are like, I got 30 days. And then September 1st of 10 million people standing in the street saying, I don't live anywhere.
Yeah. So there are already interventions. In New York, for example, the New York State government is partnering with an organization to pay the landlords. And that's going to be amazing because we have, we just print more money and it's going to just
because New York's got all the money in the world.
Right.
They weren't in a budget crisis before all this.
Yeah. So that's what's happening in New York, and I think that's going to happen in other states also. But really, also begs the question why like we didn't go this route before. Like, if we're going to just pay all these people, like why didn't we start doing this earlier and be able to evict people and so they can move on to other homes and pay their rent there? I mean, if we're just going to be throwing money at people, like let's get started because.
You know what other countries are doing? When businesses would shut down, they would keep paying the employees. The government paid the employees to not go to work. But if they quit that business, they wouldn't get paid anymore.
Yeah.
As opposed to incentivizing them to quit and not go back to work, which
Right.
we've done in the United States.
Yeah.
And the businesses were shut down. So these restaurants would have $20,000 worth of food in their fridges, and then they get closed for even if it was 15 days. All that food spoils. They couldn't sell it, and now they're in the hole 20 grand.
And they're reopening some of them, and they're like, okay, guys, come back to work. And the people are like, no, I'm getting paid to stay at home.
Dude, the most brutal story was when they reopened and then quickly shut down. Ugh. So there was one story about a New York restaurant where they were like, we all our food was spoiled. We got rid of it all. They said we are reopening, so then we ordered another $20,000 worth of food to get everything back and ready to go. And then they announced there was like a halt and they were going to shut back down or something, and then all the food spoils again. And it is just beating small businesses over that over and over and over again.
Is this like another transfer of wealth to landlords?
Yes.
Like they're sending government
Not
money
to the landlords.
to landlords?
The landlords are still in the hole. What are they going to pay the back rent?
Yeah. They are paying
Really?
back. Yeah. So like the story today was one landlord was owed $28,000 and they sent him $24,000. But they're going to look into why they didn't send the other $4,000 and then resend it to him. So I don't understand how it's happening. I don't understand how there's anywhere near enough money for it. But
because then next month there's going to be a bunch of people didn't pay this month and they're going to have to do it again. Right?
Yeah. It's like we really don't learn. So
I don't think they realized, or maybe they did, maybe it's the Great Reset, that you can't just stop an economy. It's a freight train.
Yeah.
What you ever I think I used this analogy before. You ever see the movie Hancock with Will Smith?
A part of it.
Jason Bateman's car stops in the tracks and he can't get out, and the train's coming. So Hancock lands, flips his car out of the way, and then the train hits him, and he doesn't move. So the train just crumples, and then every car flies up in the air because that energy is gonna go somewhere, and then they're all just like dropping and crashing. That's what happened. So this idea that we can just be like, okay, start her back up, turn the key, and then the economy's going to go, it's not going to happen.
Right. I write about small businesses a lot. I had a column this week about how a lot of the tech firms are already pushing back their coming back date. It was supposed to be September, which is already, such a long time away even now. But they're already moving to October, and Twitter said that they're not even opening their offices for a while.
No, they're closed.
Yeah. So there's a bunch of, businesses that support those big businesses. The bodega and the halal cart guy and the shoe shiner and the dry cleaner and everybody on that street. And they're all paused, waiting for normalcy to return. And these companies are like, I don't know, maybe we will, maybe we won't. We'll see.
It's really interesting. I think a lot of younger people, especially the Democrat voters, because they skew younger, or at least there's more younger people, they don't understand basic economics. Like, a city with no industry eventually dies out because no money is coming in. Supermarkets, small businesses don't survive because they're usually, providing a service to an existing infrastructure. So what happens is exactly what you said. Twitter says we are closing our offices in New York. What's below the Twitter office? Probably a bodega and a restaurant.
Right.
Who are their customers?
Twitter.
Employees of Twitter who are going to lunch. Now the office is closed. There's not even going to be another business that comes in to replace it. So now the local corner store has no one in the area, no one's at work, so they shut down, and it's going to ripple across the board. Then they pay these landlords. They give people free money. They just keep giving free money. But you know what free money is? A ticket to extract resources without providing resources.
Yes.
That imbalance cannot be corrected. There's no key to just turn the engine on to fix that.
Yeah.
To me, that sounds a little bit like they expect you to be able to travel back in time. And just like they thought it would be really simple to shut down the economy, it seems to me like they also think it's going to be really simple to just open it up again.
Yeah.
Just start it up again.
But so they're doing these emergency things in New York, but are they doing it anywhere else?
I don't know. This was just announced today in New York. So
Wow.
I don't know.
Last minute save. I have to imagine that there's a lot of states that aren't going to get these bailouts.
Yeah.
And we're going to see millions of people without homes. I wonder at what point people just start saying, I don't care what you say anymore. You know, I'm already seeing, because DC locked down, tons of people tweeting, they don't care what they say. They're not going to abide by this stuff. And I'm like, at a certain point, people just say enough.
And I hope you're right. I have seen nothing
I'm not saying
from my fellow Americans this year, especially from my fellow New Yorkers, to suggest that people are going to take any kind of stands.
Well, New York,
I know.
it's a bit different.
But I mean, like a year ago, I thought for sure if schools didn't open in New York, if public schools didn't open in New York, but private schools did open in New York, I was like, oh, the parents are going to riot. Are you kidding? The private schools open, but the public schools don't? No, nobody said anything.
Yeah. I feel like, we're out in the middle of nowhere. And part of me is like I was mentioning there earlier, I'm sitting here thinking like, I wonder what the chickens are doing, because they don't care about this. That makes sense to me. They're going there, they're eating food, they lay eggs. I know what's going on. I look at the news, I have no idea. I'm wondering how many people are just going to continue to evacuate these cities, are going to keep leaving, because we've heard about the exodus. I'm wondering why you're still in New York.
Well, we would have never left before the pandemic. I mean, I knew I lived in a super leftist place, but at least it was a competent city. I mean, it was going so well that we elected Bill de Blasio twice. Like, that's how well things were going, that we just didn't care, who was mayor. But after this year, we lived in Florida for almost 5 months, and it was an oasis of sanity, and now we're definitely thinking about making it a permanent move. I mean, it's hard. You had your vision of your life. We were going to live in Brooklyn, raise our kids there, retire to Manhattan, and now it's like, oh, we're going to move to a different state entirely. It's tough.
West Virginia's pretty nice.
I need an
Live in the
ocean.
mountains.
I need an ocean.
Okay.
Yeah, well, it's not
Fair.
too far away. It's like an hour. But Bill de Blasio said the voluntary phase is over.
Yeah.
So are you guys? Is that a factor?
I mean, it's not for about the vaccines. Like I said, I'm vaccinated. My husband's vaccinated. But
no, but it's like the political changes.
Yes, it is crazy. I also just don't believe him. The voluntary phase is over.
Yeah, because
he's
paying
the
people
biggest
now.
goof. Like he's just. And what's crazy is he actually did a better job throughout the pandemic than Governor Cuomo, but Cuomo was like the hero of the pandemic.
Right.
But de Blasio was actually, if you look at them side by side, I mean, they're both like terrible, but de Blasio did better.
Yeah. De Blasio is probably kicking himself for not murdering those 15,000 people like Cuomo
Yeah.
did, right? Because that's something Cuomo got away with. Certainly, that was a factor. I can't believe that. I'm
still.
just. I sit here every day. I wake up and I'm like, Cuomo murdered 15,000 people.
And nobody cared.
He was warned not to do it. He could have put him in the Javits Center or the Mercy Hospital vessel, and he said, no, I'm going to put him in nursing homes.
Yeah.
Because he didn't want to give Trump the win. Dead. Well, now Bill de Blasio is giving people $100 NYC to pay Big Apple locals $100 for first COVID vaccine injection.
What?
Like this creeps people out. I'm sorry. All right, like they did lotteries. There are some people you're not going to convince.
Yeah.
I think the $100 might get a lot of people, though.
I agree. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think people will motivate to go. I think that the fact that they're still at vaccination centers, not in your doctor's office, really does deter people. So if they're paying $100, I guess they'll go they'll go to get some random location and get their vaccination there. But it is creepy. It's very creepy that they need to be handing out $100 bills.
Are they paying people that already got vaccinated in retrospect now?
No.
Well,
no.
but
That's dirty.
What if someone goes to one of these vac centers and says like, "Oh, I never got it," but they did because they want $100?
Yeah.
Oh.
I think, is there a data? I mean, I don't even know. Is there a database? Like, there's no database to check whether.
Oh, I don't know.
Yeah.
In
I
the-
assume there would be.
And in the future, this would be incentive to say, no, I'm not going to get it, and wait until they start bribing.
For
and then
sure.
be like, I'll take the
Right.
bribe.
Right.
point.
Who's going to get the booster, for example, until they give me $1,000?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like
I love the
you
price.
ever flying a plane and they're like, "We are overbooked. We need
Right.
volunteers." is. We're off. Like, will
Yeah.
anyone volunteer? No one does. We're offering $100. No
Right.
one does. 200, 300. I guess they, last time I flew, it was like they can go up to like $1,000.
Wow.
So what I would do is when they would say like, here's our offer, I would go up and be like, double it. And
Yeah.
it would be like, done. Here you go. And I'd be like, all right. And then I'd just be
Right.
like, I'm going to sit here for a few hours. I'm good.
You should also get the food voucher, right? And like a hotel voucher. You can get it all.
to go.
Oh yeah, depending on how long you get delayed, you can
Yeah.
also be like, I once was just like, can I get first class on the next flight? And they were like, yes, sir.
Wow.
And I was like, yes. They just got to. They have to get you off that plane.
Yeah.
So anyway, yes, people are going to be like, oh, they want boosters now.
Right.
Let's wait it out and see how much we can get out of this guy.
The less of us that go, the faster they'll start bribing us.
Yeah. That might not work out.
Dude, I wonder if the main problem is that there's just too many people.
Just in general.
It's poorly
Yeah, just in general.
organized. Because
Well, how do you organize millions and millions and millions of people
on the internet is like, I was just thinking about this. If we did have some sort of like debt revolution or something where people either refuse to pay their debts or they defaulted on Federal Reserve interest or whatever, that wouldn't be enough. A chaotic revolution would just be madness. We'd have to like create a new constitution, maybe using the Manila Principles, factoring in the internet, using cryptocurrency, building a new economy all at once. If there was a change, we'd have to have the structure in place like the founding fathers did. We're there. We're close to it. The Manila Principles are legit. Cryptocurrency is amazing.
I just think about how like a lot of our structures in terms of Congress and voting was built around a substantially smaller amount of
Yeah,
people.
and
2.5
less
million
technology.
people in
Like
colonies.
sending like writing things on with feathers and sending on horseback.
No IDs.
Took 2 months to get messages to England and back.
Right. You know what always tripped me out is like I was watching Pirates of the Caribbean, and it's like the opening scene in the first movie where Jack Sparrow's on the boat as it's sinking, and he lands, and then they're like, "What's your name?" And he's like, "I'll pay you if you don't ask." Why? Just tell him Bill Smith.
Yeah.
And he does say Smith though, but like,
yeah.
just you can just walk and be like, "Hi, I'm John Smith."
Pick a
How's it
name,
going?
yeah.
There you go. Prove it. What are you gonna do about it? And then there's like, "Oh no, he's been branded or whatever." But yeah, that's one thing people need to understand is like I was talking about this earlier. The reason why you had to own land in order to vote was mostly because there were no IDs, and your tie to the community was the fact that you lived there. And they didn't want people to show up who didn't live there, vote for things, and then leave. That was part of it. Obviously, there were still a lot of old patriarchal structures and things like that. But I think the changes that came about with universal suffrage made sense in that we're not buying land anymore. We live in New York. We rent it. Most people are renters, so they vote in that capacity. But things were so dramatically different back then. I wonder if we got to get back to people got to spread out, get out of these cities. Learn some personal responsibility.
I don't know. Yeah. I mean, the thing is that the cities were doing so great until they weren't, right? So it's like, it almost kind of shows that like the cities have had their moment, but I don't know. I mean, you really want people moving out here? Like,
Oh, that's a good point.
do you?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
not too close.
There's pros and there's
Right.
cons. It's not about too close. It's about like there's lot sizes. It's like, so if they like, there's few acres around where it's like we have our space, we have more space than a city.
Yeah.
Would I want to live in Philadelphia? We had half an acre for the whole house. So the front yard was a third, the house was a third, the backyard was a third, and you couldn't do a whole lot. I mean, we could skate in the backyard and we had a mini ramp, but we could only do it between certain hours because the neighbors would be like too late, too early. Now we can go out at 1 a.m. and scream at the top of our lungs. And there are people who live not too far away. They don't care. Some days you'll be sitting there and you'll hear bangs, you'll hear gunshots, and you're just like, oh, hunting again. You just turn your coffee, like
in
whatever.
Brooklyn too.
Oh yeah,
It's a little different.
Yeah, I lived on the on right off Myrtle and Nostrand. That's where that cops got assassinated.
Yeah.
I'd be one of the reasons I didn't know it happened when it happened. So like I'm sitting in my bed, I get a text message, "Are you near the assassinations?" And I'm like, "What happened?" It was like one of my bosses at Fusion, and then I look out the window and I see cops everywhere. It's because I'm sitting there all day and I hear gunshots all the time. And I'm just like sitting there and I hear pow, pow, pow. And I'm like, like, I'm just going to,
Wow.
whatever. I don't know. This is welcome to New York. You know what I mean? And New York's not even that bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, Chicago, way worse.
Much worse.
I thought LA was amazing before the pandemic. I was like, as we develop electric cars, we're going to get all these gas guzzlers off the road. LA is going to be a paradise. And then, but I knew in the back of my head, the central electric grid and water grid were very, very tenuous, because if some sort of cataclysm or disaster caused the water grid to break, and the electric grid to break, those people would have started cannibalizing each other. It would have been terror on earth.
Yeah.
And I think COVID gave us kind of an early warning sign
For sure.
of the
Right.
danger of being packed together in cities with a centralized, importing your water and your food and your electricity. We could decentralize the water to each house could have their own water pump, electrical,
well.
and food, grow your own food. I mean, it's pretty drastic change.
Right.
But until then, I don't see the value of living in a city.
Yeah, I think
Not with the
cities
internet.
cause cultural decay. At least they do now. I think before there used to be hubs of culture because you'd live outside the city, you'd have very little contact. Then you'd go into the city and you'd see things, you'd talk to people, you'd learn things, and it was like that's where the stuff was happening. My favorite movie to cite in this regard is the movie The Patriot with Mel Gibson because it's a great movie.
I love it.
But it's like there's that scene where he's like, the kid's like, "Are we going to Charlestown?" I'm like, "We're going to town!" Like, yeah. And now it's like, ugh, town. It smells like sour milk. There's traffic everywhere. I don't need to be there. It's hard to eat. It's hard to sit. Restaurants in New York. You know what? I think back to living there, and I understood why I wanted to live there. I remember the first time I went to New York. It was during Occupy Wall Street, and I took a bus from Virginia, and I remember finally getting to New York City, and I can't remember. I have no idea which bridge we were crossing. I can't remember. And then I see the city and the buildings, and I'm like, holy! I'm from Chicago, and New York has 5 Chicagos. So I remember you're driving downtown, you see all the buildings, and it's like I'm used to that. New York was something else. I'm like, I want to live here. It's like being downtown Chicago everywhere. And then after a few years, I was like, you want to go to a restaurant? You're crammed in the corner in this tiny seat with your shoulders like this, and you're like, thanks for the food. And there's no room. So I'm exaggerating, obviously, but it's like it's congested. It stinks. There's nowhere to park. Transportation, the trains are often crowded and smelly. And
I used to love all of this.
Yeah,
I used to love every single thing about it. Like I really was such a New York supremacist. I really thought it was the greatest place ever. And I still it's really hard. It's like I always compare it to letting go of a really good relationship, but that just isn't working out for you. Yeah, I don't know. If COVID had never happened, I would be here being New York is the best. You don't fuck with New York. Sorry, I don't know if you're allowed to curse.
What was your first experience seeing Manhattan?
So I grew up in Brooklyn, so I don't really remember.
Wow.
I feel bad for you. You know why? There's a lot of people growing up in Chicago. I got to experience the first time seeing a city as massive as New York. But for someone who's from there, there's no point where you're going to see something. I guess you go to Tokyo.
Right.
That's crazy. Tokyo's crazy.
Dude, I had the most nutball experience with New York City. I moved to Queens. I'd been through Manhattan when I was younger, but I took the subway into Manhattan for the first time. I walked out of the subway.
Oh my God.
And looked up, and it was just 90-story skyscrapers all around me, and I could feel the vacuum, and I was being sucked up and away. It was so bizarre. Man, what a city.
I do think that Tim is right. Sorry, I have to say this real fast. I think that Tim is right, and I think that cities have become too crowded. I think too many people live in one place at one time. It becomes very insular, so instead of being a cultural center, you just get an echo chamber. And also, when something goes wrong, it affects 1,000 more people than it would otherwise.
Right.
It very much affects. It's a ripple effect, and it's exponential in a city.
And just this moment of conformity, cities have really not been a great place to be when everybody has to think the same. There isn't that, diversity of thought or just a lot of great culture going on because everybody's exactly the same and you can only be one way, and comedy has to be very, very muted, and all of it really just sucks. And it is definitely a problem that is centered on cities, but it's a problem that we're having, I think, all across the country.
I think one of the issues is that when you get complete one-party rule, there's no way to challenge bad ideas.
Yep.
So the people in power are like, hey, we're going to lock everyone down and shut your businesses down. And you agree because you're a Democrat, right? You're not a Republican, are
Exactly.
you? And they go, I'm not a Republican. I'm going to wear the mask so that no one thinks I'm a Republican.
Right.
So saith David Hogg. And then you'll get Cuomo being like, I'm going to put people in nursing homes and kill 15,000 people. And then they're like, well, he's a Democrat, so it must be okay.
Yeah.
And then they find out that he abused women, and they all freak out. Like, oh no, what do we do? That's the one thing we're not supposed
But
to.
then they didn't. And then the freak out was very short lived.
Yep.
And then they were like, but he's a Democrat, so it's okay. And I'm
Yeah.
a Democrat, so it's okay.
Thanks for checking out this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. If you want to see the full show, come back to this channel, youtube.com/TimcastIRL, Monday through Friday at 8 p.m., where you can leave comments and super chat, and we actually will read your comments on the show. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe. And if you want exclusive members-only content, segments you can't get anywhere else, go to timcast.com, become a member, and we even have full bonus episodes. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all next time.